In this video, I am going to give you my #1 trick to get rid of resentment quickly. So there's many ways to get rid of resentment, but this is the one that I found to really give me the most bang for my buck, and it has been the most successful as I work with clients. So before I do that, I want to introduce myself. My name is Janna Denton-Howes. I am a marriage coach. I am also the creator of 2 programs, 30 Days to Wanting It More, which helps married women with low libido, and the Marriage Mastery Club, which is full, but I'm having lots of fun with. Stay tuned if you want to join that. It's a year-long group program with one-on-one support. So this has been the topic for our focus for this month, actually, in the Marriage Mastery Club. I've framed it a little differently, but I want to help you now get rid of resentment. So the dictionary definition of resentment, because I was a little bit confused, resentment and disappointment is bitter indignation at having been treated unfairly. So there's a component of injustice has been taking place, perceived injustice, and it's just not fair. So I have a belief that this is gonna, let's start right away, that when resentment starts to creep up in your marriage, you're feeling resentment, or your husband is, it means that there is a need, you have a need that's not being met. So there's this feeling like my husband's needs are getting met completely and mine aren't. And that really comes from a really unfortunate mentality in our culture, which is of scarcity. There's always a winner and there's always a loser. And I always try to teach people that there can be a win-win situation. So the example of resentment, it can happen in the past or it can be happening in the present. So in the past, perhaps maybe you decided that you wanted to do a certain career, but you felt like you were held back. Maybe you decided to stay at home with your kids, or maybe it was expected of you and you feel resentment that you didn't take that career path, or you took so much time off of work. It could also be in the present. I'll give the most popular example, which is housework. You feel like you are doing way more than your share. You're feeling resentful that you're picking up after everybody and you're working late into the night. And it's no fun, right? No fun at all. So what I'm going to share right now is kind of the high road. It's not easy. It's so much easier to just point the finger and place blame and, because you didn't treat me fairly and, this is not fair, and stomp my feet and have a tantrum. But this is, if you want to really get rid of resentment, this is the way to go. So I talked about that when resentment happens, I believe it's because one of your needs wasn't getting met. Here's the thing. We are all responsible for getting our own needs met, which is not really what we're taught about when it comes to marriage. We're taught that when you get into a relationship, your spouse kind of will complete you, that now your spouse's job is to make you happy, and that's going to be the way it is. And you can kind of see how quickly that would build up resentment. Maybe your husband came into the game thinking this is great. My wife's going to be my biggest supporter and she's going to be so excited that I want to buy a motorbike. And surprise, surprise, you think it's too expensive and a little dangerous. And he has a lot of resentment over these years because you never supported him in that dream. So the first step is recognizing that we have to take ownership of our own needs and ownership for getting them met. Not to mean that your spouse can't be a supporter, encourager, a cheerleader, but at the end of the day, you are the one who is responsible for identifying your need and getting it met. So that is the next step. So the first one is, taking ownership to getting your needs met. The second one is figuring out what are your needs. That can be really challenging for women in particular. And number 3, having a good relationship with your needs, because I find a lot of times women think it's the relationship with their spouse that is the problem, but it's actually the relationship with their needs that is the problem. So how do you figure out what your needs are? The first question you can ask yourself is, well, what do I feel resentment about? That's where you can start. So if it's about the housework, then you have a need for order and tidiness and maybe beauty in your environment. If you're feeling resentful about maybe your spouse you feel like is stopping you in your spiritual practice. Maybe you want to do some meditation, but you feel like there's no time for that or space in your life, or maybe you want to go to church, but your husband is not supporting you in that. You have a relationship, and you have a need to develop a relationship with God, perhaps, or have a community in your faith community, maybe a need for connection. So what are you feeling resentful about? What do you nag your spouse about? Because we as women are just much more comfortable looking at the negative and what's not going very well instead of what we want. So that's a good place to start. What are you always on your spouse's back about? Maybe it's about budgeting. Maybe you're always like, oh, you're overspending, and I just feel like we can never get through anything, and I need to, retirement's, I'm thinking about that. And so you might have a need for financial security. And that's okay. It might not be your spouse's need, but it is yours. So that brings me to my second point, is that you need to develop a good relationship with your needs. So a lot of women find themselves just too much, too needy. What else? They are looking for permission and equal enthusiasm about their needs from their partner. So, I have a need for beauty in my house, and I started getting that need met in my shed office, but I started to realize that I wasn't really enjoying being in my home, in my living room and kitchen, because I kept on waiting for my house to be equal, my husband to be equally enthusiastic about my need for beauty. It's not his need. His need is more adventure and excitement. So he was putting his focus on like camping equipment and, fixing up our trailer and getting a truck to pull the trailer. Meanwhile, I wasn't speaking up because I had a complicated relationship with my need for beauty. I thought it might be too frivolous or too girly or something. And it wasn't until recently that I discovered that I really need to do that. So now I have taken ownership of that need, and now I am working on beautifying my living room, and I think I've gotten to the point now, and I'm so much happier. And my husband was fine to go along with it, but he wasn't as enthusiastic as I wanted him to be. The last thing that we struggle with in terms of our relationship with our needs is that we don't, because it's complicated and we feel like we shouldn't have that need, we want our spouse to just read our minds and figure out our needs on their own without us identifying them or telling them what they are or even feeling comfortable with those needs. And we want our husband to meet those needs without any dialogue taking place. And that really comes back to that princess mentality that we're fed. I mean, how many Disney movies have this plot where there's a helpless woman and a knight in shining armor rides in and saves the day and knows exactly what she wants and provides it for her without her having to ever say anything or do anything. So it doesn't work. I hope you understand that. And it also leads to a tremendous amount of resentment. So I want to share one more thing, is that men are actually really good at getting their needs met. And I find a lot of times as women shame men for that, shame them for playing video games with their friends, or shame them for going on that camping trip they wanted to, or shame them for playing sports. Maybe they go out, play soccer once a week, and you're like, that's not fair. I have resentment. Why am I at home? But meanwhile, they're actually just doing a really good job at assessing their needs and getting their needs met, taking ownership of that. So you actually can just really learn something from your husband and start putting that into practice in your own life. If you are like, okay, great. Well, here's a recap. I've taken ownership of my needs. I've figured out what my needs are. I've kind of worked a little bit on my relationship with my needs and seeing them as valued and valuable and important. And, I'm feeling confident in that. Then I might have to make a request of my husband. I might want to go out once a week. I might want to go back to school. I might want to start spending money on something. I might want to, learn the electric guitar, and it's going to be loud in my house. So if you're curious about how to talk to men about your husband so you elicit a really good response, I actually did a free class called The Secrets of the Husband Brain. And now you can just download that yourself. It's about an hour, and I really, really recommend. I've got some tremendous amount of feedback from that and it being really helpful. So wherever you are on the blog or Facebook or, YouTube, I will put a link to that free husband brain class. And I really think that'll help you a lot in moving forward and getting out of resentment, because that's what we're trying to do here. So I wanted to read, I actually got a message from one of my clients yesterday, and I wanted to share how she kind of took ownership of her needs. So she wrote, "Today I whined a lot in my head. I felt very angry and like a victim. I finally realized I needed to get out tonight. I need a daily break." She's got 3 kids. "Usually I would call my husband to discuss it, aka get his permission, approval, acceptance. But today I called and told him I needed to leave when he got home. And when I left, he thanked me for letting him know my needs." Whoa. So I hope that inspires you guys to go ahead and do the same. Have a great week. I'll talk to you next week.